one of the quickest ways to make people quietly pull away from you is by turning every conversation into a stage where you are the star and everyone else is just an audience member. We don't always do it on purpose. Sometimes we think we're relating or sharing our experience or just adding to the conversation. But when every story circles back to you, your achievements, your struggles, your opinions, your past, you're not connecting, you're performing. People don't feel seen when the spotlight never leaves you. They start to feel invisible, unnecessary, or worse, used. Because the truth is, a conversation is not a speech. It's an exchange, it's a rhythm, it's give and take, not take and take. And here's the deeper truth most people never say out loud. When you talk only about yourself, what you're really communicating is, what I have to say matters more than who you are. Playing that lands as ego, that lands as self-centeredness. And even if people smile politely, their hearts are already stepping back. Amita, great conversation is not built on impressing people, it's built on including them. Okay? It's not about being interesting, it's about being interested. Want to know if you talk too much about yourself? Watch what people do when you pause. Do they jump in? Or do they go quiet because they're used to not having space? Means you don't earn connection by being the loudest voice in the room. Okay, you earn it by making room for someone else's voice. Real confidence doesn't need a microphone. Okay, real connection doesn't need a spotlight. Est, and the most likable people are not the ones who talk the Donnie most. They're the ones who make others feel like they matter. Uzalian, interacting is one of those habits that most people don't intend to be rude, but it almost always feels rude to the person on the other side. When you interrupt, you're not just cutting off someone's sentence, you're cutting off their thought, their emotion, and their sense of being respected. Bond, most people interrupt for three reasons. They're excited and can't wait to respond. You know, they assume they already know what the person is going to say. They believe their point is more important, but no matter the reason, the message that lands is the same. What I have to say matters more than what you're saying right now. And you know what that creates? Distance, shut down, silent resentment. Bland, because when someone interrupts us, we don't feel heard, we feel dismissed. We don't feel valued, we feel talked over, and after a while, we stop trying to speak at all. Interacting doesn't just damage conversations, it damages trust. Mind DNS, and even if you interrupt with good intentions to help, to clarify, to add, the other person still walks away feeling unseen. B&Gians, you know what's powerful? Letting someone finish, letting their thought breathe, giving them the space to land their words before you lift yours. You don't lose intelligence by listening. And you don't lose power by being patient. You don't lose your voice by letting someone else use theirs. Mans, if you really want to be someone others feel safe speaking to, make this your silent rule. Listen to understand, not to reply faster. Lands, because the people who make others feel heard are the people others want to keep talking to. Yalyan, some people don't argue, they outdo. You share a story, they have a bigger one. Yin, you talk about a challenge, they've had a tougher one. You mention something you're proud of, they've already done it better, faster, or earlier. It may not look like aggression, but it feels like emotional one-upmanship, and it quietly pushes people away. Because at its core, this habit sends a loud message. Your experience is just a setup for my spotlight. Alien G, people don't always want a comparison. Sometimes they just want a connection. Cal, they don't need you to win, they need you to witness. Manjans, turning everything into a competition doesn't make you impressive, it makes you exhausting. Manjit, here's what most don't realize. No, when you constantly top someone's story, you're not bonding, you're shrinking their moment. Okay, you're saying nice, but let me show you what really matters. ME, But the truth is, conversations are not a scoreboard. There is no trophy for best story. There is no gold medal for biggest struggle. There is no applause for most successful. And people don't remember the person who tried to outshine them. They remember the person who made them feel seen without being overshadowed. Real confidence doesn't need to compete. Real maturity doesn't need to win. And real connection happens when you stop trying to be better and start trying to be present. And bands, if you want people to enjoy talking to you, learn the difference between sharing and competing. You know, that sharing says, me too. Competing says, me more. One grows closeness, the other grows distance. Nothing drains a room faster than a person who always has something to complain about. It doesn't matter if they're smart, funny, or even right. If every conversation becomes a storm of problems, criticism, and pessimism, people will quietly step back to protect their emotional energy. Bland negativity is emotionally contagious. One person's constant complaining can turn a light conversation into a heavy one. And here's the part most people don't realize. People don't dislike you because you have problems. They dislike being around you because you make your problems the center of every interaction. Everyone has bad days. Everyone vents sometimes. That's human. But when negativity becomes a personality instead of a moment, people start to associate you with emotional heaviness. Mamdis, you know what people subconsciously ask themselves when they see you? Will this conversation lift me or drain me? And if the answer is drain, they slowly pull away, not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. Bland, because here's the truth, people don't distance themselves to punish you. They do it to protect themselves. Mambius, the real problem with chronic complaining isn't just what you say, it's what it blocks. Unknown, gypsant gratitude, gypsant curiosity, gypsant joy, gypsant connection, gypsant hope, gypsant solutions. Negativity doesn't make people think you're deep. It makes them feel like they're walking through mud every time they talk to you. Blends. If you want people to feel safe staying close, try this mindset shift, stammetly. Share struggles, but also share lessons. Daskly, express frustration, but also express gratitude. SEBE, talk about the problem, but don't forget to notice what's still working. You don't need to be unrealistically positive. Just don't be relentlessly negative. MDN, people are not looking for perfect energy. They're looking for balanced energy. Lamandus, when you become a person who can be honest without being emotionally heavy, right? People stop avoiding you and start valuing you. Ujunkete. One of the most common and most misunderstood conversation habits that quietly pushes people away is the urge to fix everything. You hear someone share a problem and instantly your mind starts searching for solutions. Have you tried this? You should do that. Here's what I would do. It feels helpful, even caring. But to the other person, it can feel dismissive. Like you're saying, your feelings don't need to be heard. They need to be corrected. And Delians, here's the truth most people don't realize, not every person who vents is looking for advice. Many people are simply looking for connection, not correction. Umblinges. When someone opens up, they don't always want a solution. They want space. They want validation. Okay. They want someone who can sit with them, not someone who tries to pull them out of it. Dend advice, when not asked for, can feel like, you're not handling this right. You can't you. You should think the way I think. Your feelings are a problem to be fixed, not understood. And the result, people start to share less with you. Not because they don't trust you, but because they don't feel safe being human around you. The most emotionally intelligent people don't rush to fix. Okay, they listen first, ask second, advise last, if advice is even needed. Oh man, here's a powerful shift. Instead of saying, here's what na hu fake and here's what you should do. Here's what you should do. MBD instinct chilandi try asking, do you want advice or do you just need someone to listen? Banda, that single question builds more trust than 100 solutions. Paland, because sometimes the most healing thing you can say is not a sentence full of answers, but one that says, I'm here, I hear you, you're not alone. Banned advice may solve the problem, but empathy saves the relationship. There's a difference between being emotionally open and being emotionally open. Okay, some people mistake vulnerability for emotional dumping, sharing every fear, every detail, every wound with anyone at any moment without considering the timing, the place, or the relationship. Banians, they believe they're being real, but to others, it feels like pressure. And pressure makes people quietly back away. Demand. Here's the truth, not every conversation is the right container for deep feelings. Not every person is ready for emotional depth at the exact moment you need to express it. And not every silence needs to be filled with intensity. Emotional depth is powerful, but emotional timing is wisdom. Planned. When someone suddenly throws deep, heavy personal subjects into a light or casual moment, it can feel like, you know, CPAT, you're using the other person as a therapist. You're offloading instead of opening up. CPAT, you expect emotional labor they didn't agree to, and most people won't say, hey, this is a lot for me right now. Instead, they'll just slowly avoid the next conversation because even vulnerability, when forced, becomes a burden, not a bridge. Um, Limdy, the healthiest people know this. Glenity vulnerability is a gift, not a requirement. Limitly emotional sharing needs consent, not assumption. Classically, depth works best when it flows, not when it's pushed. Before going deep, ask yourself, is this the right person? Is this the right time? Is this the right space? And if you're truly emotionally aware, you might even ask them, is it okay if I go a little deeper? Okay. Are you in a good headspace to talk about something heavy? Again, do you want real talk or light talk right now? That's not weakness, that's emotional respect. Man deep doesn't mean dramatic. Vulnerable doesn't mean intense. And real connection is not created through force, but through mutual readiness. M to be indest. If you want people to feel safe being close to you, don't just open your heart, read the room first. Gallant, Ingo, gossip feels harmless until you realize what it really communicates. Okay? When you speak negatively about someone who isn't in the room, the person who is in the room starts wondering, what will they say about me when I'm not here? And that thought right there, that's the quiet seed of distrust. Most people don't confront gossip, they just observe it. They laugh, nod, or stay silent. But inside, they're making a mental note. This person is not safe with my name, my story, or my vulnerability. Being a gossip isn't just about other people's business, it's about your character. Palandius, because when you tear someone down, you're not showing how flawed they are, you're showing how empty you feel. And yes, sometimes gossip is disguised as, say PP, AP, PP, PNEP mean EP. Just being honest. EPMP. Just sharing what I heard. So even just saying the truth, but honesty without kindness is cruelty. And truth without purpose is just noise. Manded, here's the hard but freeing truth. No. If the only bond you have with someone is built on talking about someone else, that's not connection. That's insecurity teaming up with boredom, and people feel it. Monder want to know who gets silently respected in every room. Bans the person who can hear a rumor and not repeat it, the person who knows something personal and protects it. Land the person who could talk badly about someone but chooses not to. That is real power. That is emotional maturity. Okay? That is how you earn trust without demanding it. around you, because while gossip makes people laugh with you, integrity makes people trust you, and most of the time people don't dislike a gossiper because they're mean. Um, they dislike them because they are unsafe. Y'all yashin. One of the simplest ways people feel unnoticed and eventually disconnected is when they talk to someone who never asks anything back. You answer their questions, you listen to their stories, you give them space, but the conversation never circles back to you. It becomes a one-way road. You listen, they speak, and here's the silent message it sends. I'm interested in being heard, not in knowing you. Most people don't need long conversations to feel valued. And they just need curiosity, a sense that you care enough to ask, yo, how about you, Kenny? What was that like for you? What do